Hey everybody, welcome to Reflections, the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. We are coming to you as always courtesy of our broadcasting partner moretalk.tv. Joining me this week on the show, I'm welcoming back Robin Wimbiscus. Robin is a freelance illustrator, a visual arts teacher, and a mentor who conducts workshops across the United States. Robin teaches individuals and groups to understand their emotions and reduce fear and trauma through artistic expression and interpretation. Her company, Realign, offers programs that she developed called Intuitive Art Education and Awareness. She discovered that the colors we paint with are our own personal roadmap for life. Her website is robinwimbiscus.weebly.com, and Robin is a featured presenter at the upcoming Virginia Beach Inner Life Retreat, Experiencing Your Sacred Self Conference. And this is at the a.r.e. in Virginia Beach from March 4th through the 6th of 2016. As always, if you'd like to register for this or other conferences, you can visit our website at edgarcayce.org/conferences. Robin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. I want to start a little bit about your background because I know I've had you on the show a couple years ago, but some of our listeners may not be familiar with your line of work. So you can give us a little bit about your professional background and kind of how that brought you to the Cayce material and working with the a.r.e.
Sure. Boy, I guess it was about going on 15 years now. I started working as an art director and visual arts teacher at a therapeutic boarding high school. And the kids would come into the classroom. They hated art. They hated school, anything that was related. So I developed a program where they could just come in and play with paint and watercolors and kind of take the stress off of having to learn some sort of technique or anything in particular. And what I found, which was fascinating, is that when they just played with colors, it would prompt me to ask just questions. And these questions would lead to these kind of unending kind of conversations. It took about, maybe another 8 years before I realized that there was an actual vocabulary to all of the colors that I was asking these questions for. For example, blue would always make me ask questions about their intuition and their emotional state and how they kind of process different thoughts. So all of these colors now had a new language for me, which was just absolutely fascinating. And then when I found that this was this wonderful nonverbal communication, there was so much information in one small painting, I started to go out and do professional development workshops for other educators, for other teachers, and even currently now I have a contract where I'm working at a preschool, which has just been fascinating. And so through that process, I also developed some other techniques that kind of came, which are the spiritual paintings that I'll be teaching at the workshop coming up soon, and a whole different medium and level of listening to your intuition. So I'll be excited about that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And what did you find in the Cayce readings about color and vibration and the healing potential of art?
Well, it was really interesting because as I was doing all of this, I thought I was just kind of odd and strange, and I had a friend of mine say, have you read anything about Edgar Cayce? And I at that time, I only knew a little bit about him, not nearly what I do now. And he suggested I go get the book of Colors and Auras. And I was fascinated by how closely our definitions and our language was the same, and the meanings of these colors. What's interesting to me is that when you do them in a painting, they mix and they flow, so there's tons of color combinations, which give you even more clues as to what's going on in a person's life. So for me, it was incredibly comforting that somebody like Edgar Cayce had already been doing this work, and it like I said before, it just felt like I was coming home. So since that time, and I called the a.r.e. and wonderful about giving me an incredible list of books to read. So I've still been on my path of it's so large and fascinating. I'm always learning something new.
Absolutely. And Robin, you have said that every color and color combination vibrates at a different frequency. And this may be a bit of a new concept to our listeners, so I want to get a little more into this. You say that we're attracted or repelled by these vibrations based on our personality type and our current emotional state. And can you
Right.
go a little more in depth into this attraction with colors that we have, and also why it's so important in our daily lives?
Well, I guess the best way to explain it, I mean, um, one of the kind of cool things that I do in early ed is I'll go into a classroom in the beginning of the year, and I'll have all of the children just paint a picture, a really quick watercolor painting. And one of the first things that I pick up on is the processing skills of certain people. So most people tend to be either blue or orange. And so if you're drawn to blues, typically you're an intuitive processor, you're an emotional and intuitive thinker. You act and you respond on feelings. And you know things because you know things. That's how you were born. For those children who have a tendency to use more orange, they have a tendency to want facts. They're analytical processors. They want the details. They want the whens, the whys, the hows. And so the most important information for a teacher is to find out what colors they are. And what happens is it eliminates confusion, and it builds this great communication. So a teacher automatically, before working with the students, knows how to talk to a child to just respond to them better. So I do another workshop where for adults where you have to use colors you do not like. And what's fascinating with that is many people, will grimace at it, but by the time they're halfway through or partially way through, they end up liking these colors. And what it is I'm convinced, and I think in a lot of Edgar Cayce's work, we're always opening up our chakras for healing, and they're connected to color as all the energies that kind of go through, so this healing can take place. So a lot of times if I'm not liking a particular color, I will purposely work with it to have it kind of teach me what I need to know to be a little bit more balanced. And it's always a fascinating lesson.
Absolutely. And I'm curious from an artistic perspective, why watercolor? What is it about watercolor that helps to facilitate your personal practice?
Well, I think water in itself, just to start with, is one of the purest energy forms, and it's so free-flowing, you can't control it. And so when you put the water on the paper, and then you're just drawn to these colors, and the minute you put the watercolor paint on this wet paper, it's kind of like fireworks, and it's explosion, and it goes where it wants to go. I've seen these colors mix and form that you wouldn't have ever dreamed could do that on your paper. And then when you look at them and you analyze them, it's like, oh, that is what's going on in my life. That is what I need to kind of look at and process. So that part has been fascinating, but it's a huge sense of letting go and having some trust in the fact that everything that we need to learn, everything that we need to know is here. We just have to accept it and let it do its thing to show us.
Absolutely. And Robin, you had mentioned that you are currently working with preschoolers or kindergartners, I believe you said, and you also you'll be putting on a conference at the workshop here in Virginia Beach. So, of course, you cover all age ranges with your work. I'm curious, what are the differences and the similarities you find between working with adults and working with children? Do you run into any barriers?
Well, this has been really interesting, because I was working with the high school students, and they're very verbal for the most part. And so going into a preschool, and being that one of my jobs is I work with a lot of children in trauma, and so knowing how to communicate or how to, I'm using the watercolors to help me guide them to connect their physical feelings with their emotional feelings. So, and I'm doing it all through their artwork. I found it very challenging in the beginning because there is no vocabulary. They're very young children, so I was going to say painful, but I love them and they're dear. But it's a very different process. So I'm really enjoying the learning curve on this. It's like I said, working with the adults, and I do a lot of community work in the same daycare center. So I work with the parents and I work with the children. And I've been doing the spirit guide paintings that we'll be doing in this workshop to kind of rewrite their life. So it's again a fascinating process where we take an event that they feel was negative growing up or negative impacting their life, and we will do these spirit guide paintings and work on seeing what the lessons were, why it was an important lesson, and why we're grateful that we had that lesson. So in one day's time, I can go from completely nonverbal little children to their parents and adults and going into the spirit guide painting. So it's a full day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robin, you've called this sort of intuitive art education, is what you've loosely labeled this practice.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what have you found over the years working with both young children and adults? What have you found is the why is it that we stop painting? I guess I would ask. As a child, we're so into these creative activities, and they're such meditative, just soul feeding activities. And a lot of times, as we get older, we kind of these fall by the wayside. And it's obvious that you've seen the importance of this and the healing potential that it has. So, what have you noticed? Why do we quit doing things like that? What's happening here? What's the disconnection?
Yeah, that's so fascinating because, I'll walk through the daycare center and the little kids will be, can I paint with you today? Can I paint with you today? And there's just so much excitement around that, and it's just so free. And I think what happens is as we get older, judgments really get in the way. We look around and we see that there are people who are artists, and then we say, well, I'm not as good as them, so I'm going to stop. I think also in the school systems, when it gets to the point where it becomes work and it's no longer intuitive and it's no longer fun, and you're learning techniques and styles, and it ends up not being a meditative tool anymore. It becomes a grade. I think it becomes very, very difficult. And so I think those are the differences. So bringing it back to people to allow them to play, just allow them to not have the judgments, and who cares what it looks like? Tell me how it feels. I'm more interested in that.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit, shift gears over to your conference workshop that you'll be putting on. It's coming up real soon. It's March 4th through the 6th, and it'll be here at the a.r.e. in Virginia Beach. This event is called the Inner Life Retreat, Experiencing Your Sacred Self, and your presentation will be on Sunday morning. Can you tell us a little bit about what your presentation will be on?
Yeah, it's going to be all experiential, like last time. So, they're going to come in and do lots of stuff. It was funny. I've been trying to time it because it's a very different type of workshop. The process for the spirit guide paintings is a method where you put down gesso, which is this kind of white, goopy, pasty glue kind of paint. It's all white, and you paint it down on your paper. You kind of run your hands through it. You can either ask questions or just kind of be. to see what happens. But what's fascinating is you can't see anything. It's just like white paper. But it does take about, 45 minutes for that to dry. So I was timing that before you can put these layers of watercolors on top. And when the layers start going on, and this is where we'll talk a little bit about kind of letting go of judgments, and because when the layers start to go on, you start to see images that just appear. And they're images of angels, animals, objects such as birds, feathers. And what's fascinating, and I've done this with many groups now, it's so personal. So it's really just another level of listening to your intuition and having something that's very familiar kind of guide you through your current life, through either past life experiences or just this meditative state.
Absolutely. So what you're getting at is this form of art, this form of intuitive therapy is very much a meditative activity. You're hoping to get them in a state of meditation in order to get that connection to kind of their unconscious, I guess you'd say.
Absolutely. And there'll be a couple of more exercises as well while we're waiting for things to dry. But there's a couple of line work that we do on top of a watercolor painting. So we're going to do another one so people can really understand their own colors, what they mean. And then we're going to go back on top with this kind of a contour line drawing. Again, it ends up being this really incredible meditative state. And I typically like to think of the watercolor painting that we're going to do as kind of the question. And then as we go over it with the line work, it's really, that's where the answers come. And the more practice you do, the quicker those answers come to you.
Absolutely. And Robin, what do you hope conference attendees take away from your presentation that they can carry into their daily lives?
I really want people to understand that they're not alone, number one. I think that's the most comforting thing to me. When it feels like life often goes in these waves where you do well, and then all of a sudden you just get bombarded with so much stuff and you feel lost. And I think that these tools that I'm going to be showing is a reminder of where to go. Where do you go when you're feeling a little bit lost? And then, you go to your journal, you go to some artwork, because we have the tools. And it feels so much better to go through a day knowing that, you're just not doing it alone. You've got your guides. You have your angels. You're protected. You're okay. And for me, that's just been such a huge comfort with all the growing parts and pieces.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about something that I know you must be very familiar with. I'd heard recently that there was a bit of a trend moving away from art classes in schools, and it seems like the work you're doing really is pushing towards the exact opposite. Not only is it getting art into schools, it's getting intuitive art into schools, which is helping, is doing such a huge service for kids. I'm curious, do you see a trend of this exact thing happening elsewhere? Is this something that you see as kind of the future of art in schools, kind of an intuitive approach to it?
I certainly hope so. It's one of the things I push constantly. What's nice about this particular art form is that the teachers can do it themselves, and it's very inexpensive. It's not, there's not a lot of cost involved. But what our teachers are noticing, even in preschool, when the kids can't handle being in the classroom, they're asking to go paint. And usually within, 10, 15 minutes of creating, 3 paintings, they're ready to go back to class. And I've always seen that with my high school kids who, would come out of therapy class, a session, and come into my class and do some paintings before they were ready to go back to the academic day. So I have a lot of schools in our area who have painting stations now and they're teaching self-regulation. This is, what do you need? What do you need? This is how it feels, kind of connecting those. So I'm really hoping. I've been asked to do some work in some local high schools as well to develop courses for kids for the exact purpose of starting their day with art journaling. So I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robin, you've been doing this for a number of years. I'm curious, have you noticed any trends as far as changes with people's kind of intuition? Have you noticed that the people you're working with, kind of maybe things are changing over the course of, the years that you've been doing it?
I have been finding that it's been more welcomed. I think that in the beginning, 10, 15 years ago, when I would talk about bringing this into the public school system, I felt a little bit awkward, and got a little bit of the raised eyebrows. Now it's so much more welcoming. I'm seeing more people wanting to learn about it, even for behavioral prevention. For starting in preschool. My goal, I think, has always been that if we could teach these children this tool this early, how wonderful that would be. So definitely more open, more welcoming, more people being, wanting to give it a try and putting it into their schools. So for me, that's a huge plus.
Yeah, excellent. That's good to hear. And Robin, the topic of your conference that we talked about, that's going to be here at the a.r.e. in March, is receiving and understanding messages from your spirit guides. And I want to dive a little bit into this because I know for our listeners, this is probably something that resonates with a lot of people. This whole idea of spirit guides, can you give us kind of your definition, your experience with it, and also the advice that you would give to our listeners for receiving and understanding messages from their own spirit guides?
Yeah, I think it kind of starts with it's awareness. For example, many people have connections to different things. They don't quite know why, but they're drawn to certain animals or certain birds. They have significant meanings. When I'm struggling, I'll take a walk in the woods, and nature always shows up in these paintings for everyone. There's such a connection to angels and spirits and nature. So when I always find feathers, and I bring all of my journals, and you'll see that there are like pages and pages of found feathers incorporated into my artwork. But what happens is that this awareness is meant for us to reflect. They're meant. They're put in our way. They're put in our path to call attention to the fact that we have our guides. I was doing a painting for a family. It was they had done the gesso piece, and I was doing the artwork piece, which is a very different feeling for me than to doing my own. But I was journaling through the entire piece, and this cardinal kept coming up. There's just this picture of this cardinal in different places. To find out when I gave the painting to the family, that was the grandfather. And they knew that was the grandfather. So many people already have connections to certain. I have a woman whose brother comes back to her as a dragonfly, and she every time she sees one that lands on her, she reflects on her brother and stories, and this wonderful feeling. So people will find their symbols. They will find their guides. Oftentimes angels will appear. For me, for a long time, I kept getting lions. And I never quite understood why. And then it was just a few years ago that I realized that the angel Ariel often appears as a lion. So I have pages and pages. I'm like, oh, that is just really cool. I just love the fact that, she's, connected to nature, and here she is with me always. So it's always so fascinating, and they're very personal. They're very, very personal. and people will appear.
Absolutely. And this symbology that you talk about, that seems to kind of bubble up through this form of intuitive artwork. Is this have you noticed some other trends with this? Have you, I guess, over the years with all your experience, have you noticed that there's symbolic trends with what's coming up in the art?
Well, what's in these particular paintings, animals will show up, and I also use Ted Andrews' Animal Speak book, which is fascinating, as well as I do use soul signs from Edgar Cayce's work. When symbols come up, what I find fascinating is when different animals come up, it's a time to, after the guided paintings are finished, I'll have people go through and really study what is the symbolic meaning of that particular animal showing up in your life right now. And so those parts and pieces are also kind of an extension after these paintings are done. And they're all little vignettes. So you may have, in mine, I think sometimes, there's hundreds of little images that will show up that I spend time with. I spend time to kind of understand, what are they trying to teach me? The messages are usually very simple, but very difficult for humans. Loving, compassion, patience, some tough stuff.
Yeah, of course. And you talked a little bit, Robin, about how animals seem to come up a lot. One of the other services you offer is something I think our listeners would be very interested in. It's something that I'm very fascinated with. It's a totem animal service that you offer. For our listeners who may be unfamiliar with totem animals, can you tell us a little bit about this and your unique kind of flavor for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing them. I typically, if I can, I will illustrate them actually on birch bark, which just kind of adds to that whole energy level. But animal totems, that they have been a part of culture forever. But I'll take people through a certain series of questions, asking them, about different traits, about different animals that appear, different parts and pieces. And a lot of this comes from soul signs and the aura charts and the life seals. So basically, I'll kind of do an interview with people and do an animal totem illustration for them that they can look at and see to remind them where they get their strength from, where they get their power from, what their path is. So it's just this beautiful thing they get to look at to remind them daily that, mine forever has been the raven, which is co-creator with God. And on those tough days, they just look at that and go, yep, I know what I'm doing today. I know what I'm doing. So for other people, I just think it's a great visual reminder every day of what they're doing.
Absolutely. And Robert, you're quoted as saying art is a tool for understanding life. And I know we've touched a lot about that, but what does that really mean to you, and how has that played out through your life?
Oh, it's such a sentence. I have just found that it's through the awareness. When you paint, when you see, when you feel colors, it's simple. It's really simple. When I watch children paint, when I watch them do their parts and pieces, I'm a very blue person, and when you come to do the workshop and when people come, they'll understand really what that means. I'm a completely emotional processor and an intuitive thinker, so there's not always words for things. And through the art and through doing this process, I've kind of given myself permission that that's all okay. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to not always have the right words. It's really okay to be who I am, and it kind of teaches me how to use it to the fullest. So it's not about changing who we are or being better or different. It's really about accepting who we are and using it wisely.
I like that a lot. I like that. And Robin, I'm curious, you've been doing this for so many years. We talked a little bit about trends and how things have changed. I'm curious with the kind of increased integration of technology. How has that affected your practice, both with the clients that you're working with and the workshops that you're putting on, but also your own personal presence and being active on Facebook? How has that all played into your practice?
Well, I would like I would like to say I'm better at Facebook than I am. I have a tendency to, go in spurts. I'd much rather be outside or in my journal or both. It's like the perfect combination to be outside with my artwork. I do find I love the community though, so that's what keeps me drawn. I really enjoy when people have. I give assignments sometimes online, like, oh, try this, and people will send back their paintings and their pictures, and I think that connection is wonderful. Sometimes we'll do a book reading, and we'll paint to each chapter, and people will kind of chime in on what it meant for them, and it's just kind of a beautiful experience. So that part I really love. When I do my workshops, I really like the fact that people get so lost in it that they forget that they have technology. So that's nice to know that it's okay to put that away for a little while. It'll be there when you're done. But to get into the practice of silence and get into the practice of listening to yourself. So those parts and pieces. But I have been noticing a lot that I think people are a little bit tired of being plugged in 24/7, so it's a beautiful break.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. And Robin, I'm curious for our listeners if maybe we can kind of give a quick overview of some of the colors. We've mentioned, you said blue and a couple other colors here and there, and what exactly you've found they're kind of what they say about a person. I'm curious, can you go through a few of like maybe the primary colors and give us what you found they tell about a person typically, so maybe our listeners can get an idea of
Sure.
themselves?
Yeah, it's not, when I go through when I do a workshop, the first colors, keeping in mind that there's many shades of colors, and all of these shades have a little difference, but they're all in the same area. For example, red is about the person who's painting the picture, so it's about you. So when red shows up, it's about the person painting the picture. Where that red shows up and how many times that red shows up will give me more information. So, for example, if your red shows up in the center of your painting, you enjoy being in the center of your world. That's where you operate from. So wherever your reds are, it's kind of where you operate from. The darker the reds, the more present you are in what you're doing. If there's light areas, I'll often ask somebody, is that really what you want to be doing? Sometimes there's like tons of red dots everywhere, and that would indicate a person who's got a lot going on. And so there's a whole bunch of parts and pieces to the red. But when it goes from, I call it a Christmas red, which is more of your physical outside world, so it's your body, your health, your job, your life. That's that. When it moves into the magenta colors, that's when you're working on your spiritual inner self. So oftentimes you'll see it both. When I was working with high school students, I could always tell when I was getting through to them if their reds would change from that Christmas red into that magenta. So it's kind of an important tool for me to know where they were. Then I move into the blues, and blue is about your emotion and intuition, and they're really not separated. So people who tend to use lots of blues are very emotional, intuitive thinkers. You can't give them a lot of facts and details because they don't care, and they won't remember them. That would be me. And then, but there's different values and colors of blue. So it goes everywhere from the light, playful blues to very deep, dark blues, which are very serious, urgent in nature. So, and we'll go through a lot of those parts and pieces. And then the opposite of the blue is the orange, which is the analytical processors. So those are really more about how people process. So for myself, being a teacher who's completely blue, if I have orange students, I have to work really hard at communicating, to making sure they have the what's, the why's, when, how's, because I don't talk that way. So that's kind of those are kind of those important information. I also have a lot of people who have both. They're very blue and orange, which will create this murky area in their painting, because some people haven't learned how to use both, and so they always have this inner conflict of, do I follow my heart or do I follow my head? And so I have some tips and tools on how to recognize that and how to separate it and really make that work for you. Because if you're both, man, that's golden. I have no orange in me. And so green is another really fascinating color because green is all about other people in your life. So the more the greens show up, you'll see a lot of greens come up in teachers and healthcare providers, those kind of people. And again, it's very much like the blues where it will change and shade from intensities to, this is the way I was born, everything's great, to an intense, I need to do something about this this level of intensity of how much I care for people. One of the pieces I do at school, I also look for colors and concerns in young children. And sometimes I'll see green and black with children, and it's a major concern of mine, which means that, and black is about fears and doubts, and sometimes they make themselves, without even using the color black, they'll just kind of mix and create themselves. But children or adults who use green and black, they really love people. They have this intense love for people, but they've developed a fear over it. And so there's some concerns that if they're not taught how to be okay with all of that, especially in young boys, if they're embarrassed by their emotions or their feelings, they can turn into aggressive beings, or they can do the very opposite and completely hide away and shy away from people completely. So the two extreme behaviors that can develop. So it is a kind of one of those other colors that I'm always monitoring and watching for. Let's see, purple. I just picked purple today to work with. It's all about personal energy. So I'll teach people to recognize what are you doing? Is it giving you energy or is it sucking your energy away? And there's some little things to look at in your painting to see what's doing what. Yellow is about your future and about how you perceive your what's next. When it's nice and bright and clear, you've got a good handle on it. With my teenage children, sometimes I would see yellow go down first on their painting, and then they would paint everything on top. And you'd only see this little glimpse of yellow shining through. But it was enough to, it was there, and that's what I was looking for. So oftentimes I do watch people paint and try to remember what colors went down first, what went on top of what. They're all clues as to what's going on. So that's some of them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow, that was way more than I was expecting, so thank you so much. I'm sure
I could have kept going, but I thought,
No, but that was great. I'm sure that I wanted that because I know our listeners, I'm sure, are looking. I personally was looking for something like that, just kind of an overview of what generally you've found, what trends you've found, what these colors say about people. So that was very helpful.
Oh, good.
Robin, as you look around at everything going on today, it seems well documented at this point that we're living at very unique times. There's a lot of turmoil, but also a lot of inspiring stuff going on around us. Changes are kind of breaking down the old would be the theme of what's going on right now. But I'm curious, as you look around personally at what's going on in your life, And what has you most inspired, either professionally or personally?
Say the last part again.
What has you most inspired when you look around at what's going on around you right now, as we kind of look into the future at, both your line of work and just really where we're headed? What has you most inspired?
I think what I'm really there's a lot that inspires me. Children, for sure. Um, I think one of the reasons I enjoy working with them so much is that they live a spiritual being. They're in the present. They're in the now. The minute they wake up, and it's fun to be in that. So I just that's such a wonderful reminder of what we're doing. So I think for me personally, just knowing that we're raising children at a different spiritual level and that the world is going to be changing through them. So I think it's really important to remember to laugh often with them, and play and have those things be priority. And not always focus on the things that aren't working so well, but to focus on the things that are glorious.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Robin. We'll end it on that, and thank you for that wonderful message, and thank you for bringing the service that you give to humanity. It's a beautiful, beautiful artistic representation of what we're capable of, and thank you so much for giving us some time to come on the show and tell us all about it today.
Oh, thank you, and I am so looking forward to coming to Virginia again. It's a little bit cold and dreary here, so I'm looking for the beach, and I'm looking for all the hopefully the people that I met last time. I'm just so excited. So, and thank you for today.
Of course, yeah, we're honored to have you as a part of the A.R.E. family, and we'll make sure that we give our listeners all the information to sign up for your conference in March at the A.R.E. here in Virginia Beach. So thank you, Robin.
Oh, thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, you too. To register for Robin's presentation at the upcoming A.R.E. Inner Life Retreat, you can visit our website at edgarcayce.org/conferences. If you'd like to learn more or get in contact with Robin personally, you can visit her website at robinwimbiscus.weebly.com. On behalf of everyone here at the Association for Research and Enlightenment and moretalk.tv, I wish you a beautiful, beautiful week, and thank you so much for tuning in to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. Much love. Now it's come time for the thought for the day today here on Reflections. And joining me this week is Dr. Bill Austin. Bill, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Brent. It's always great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And if you can go ahead and read the thought for the day we picked out today for our readers, our listeners, excuse me.
I'd be happy to. Today's thought comes from reading 3161-1. That primarily needed is patience, persistence, and consistence. Then we would define for the entity what we would mean by the entity having patience in an active, positive manner, not merely as a passive thing. Taking and enduring hardships or censor or idiosyncrasies of others is not necessarily patience at all. It may become merely that of being a drudge, not only to self, but an outlet of expression for others that may never be quite satisfying because there is no resistance. I like this reading. Sometimes I struggle with my interpretation of patience. And I like the way he says, this is not a passive thing. This is not a lay down and take it type of thing. This is an active engagement that you have to be persistent and consistent with. But it doesn't mean, to me, it doesn't mean that, if you're in an intolerable situation, you have to tolerate it. I like to think of it in terms of other readings from Cayce, how what you give back is what you're going to receive. And we've talked about this in the past. You know, the soft word or the kind word, diffusing the situation, diffusing the other individual, you know, giving the kindness or the gentleness that that person probably desperately needs at that moment. You know, and in some situations, you have to actively walk away because you can't do anything about it. You don't have to, you know, go to war against the individual necessarily. I think we need to always turn to our creative source, the divine within, ask for some guidance of how best to handle this situation. And I think that if we're truly listening, the guidance is going to come in the form of gentleness. And that will help with our tolerance and our patience and our dealing with that present situation. I don't think we can ever go wrong viewing it from that standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. You made a lot of good points there, Bill. Thank you. I like this one. This one makes me think of um, a lot of stuff that I see going on around me with the younger generations. What we have here is Casey talks about how patience is not simply, as you said, just letting people roll over you and just taking it. It's about being patient in an active, positive manner and not a passive. It's not a
Mhm.
passive thing. The way I look at that is so many people have an incredible sense of patience, and you can see that when you're with them. But it's one thing to have patience, as Casey says, when you're by yourself, you're not around other people, you're not dealing with the hardships of what it's like to be in a social environment and dealing with other people's problems. Casey says it's very easy to be patient in a situation where you're not dealing with other stuff. It's incredibly difficult, much more difficult to be patient when you're dealing with the hardships of getting hit with a lot of things from other people, whether it's your work environment or just a social situation. Um, what I love about this reading is Casey explains that basically what we have in the younger generations today is we have a lot of people who are looking how to best invest their energy to help make a lasting change, because it's noted that we are in difficult times and a lot of changes need to be made all across the board. What you have is you have individuals who are struggling to figure out where best to put their energy. So what we have here is we have so many people who seem to be impatient about what's going on around us and the situation that we're in. People are a little fed up with what's going on. They want changes and they want positive change. So what you have is everybody is basically in a sense faced with the opportunity to be patient with what we're going through right now as, a global community, as, smaller communities, local communities, or you can be patient with it but be active and be positive, spreading positive messages about how we are going through changes and things are going to get better. Show people how things are going to get better. That's being patient, but not just sitting there and saying, well, things will get better, but I don't need to do anything about it. Casey makes it very clear in this excerpt that it's one thing to be patient, but you have to be out there and doing things about stuff that, you don't just sit there and be patient all the time. It's not going to accomplish anything. So I love this reading. This is, again, another very empowering reading from Casey.
Yes, I like the way that you focus on be active in a positive
Yeah.
manner.
Yeah,
Be active
absolutely.
in a positive manner.
Yeah, so many times today, as you brought up, is people are impatient and they're getting frustrated, is what's happening. So you see a lot of
Yes, yes.
sometimes they have, as you've talked about in the past, the best intentions, but because the impatience has allowed them to be angry or frustrated, maybe they're not, acting in the most positive manner that they can. So I hope we can see that, change as we move into the future.
I think we will.
Yeah, I think we already are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent, Bill. Well, thank you as always for being with me today on the show for the thought for the day. I know our listeners always love it.
Thank you, Brent. Always great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Have a
My
great
pleasure.
day.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bill. You have a great week.
Thank you. Bye bye.